What if I told you that by the time your feet hit the floor this morning, you had already entirely sabotaged your ability to learn a new skill today?
Yeah, it's a pretty jarring thought to start with.
Right. And I mean, not by hitting snooze, not by like what you ate for breakfast, but by the specific language you used to tell yourself to wake up.
We really tend to think of the morning as this, this neutral territory, but neurologically, it is the absolute most vulnerable, most programmable moment of your entire day.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at something today that is going to fundamentally change how you view those first, say, 20 minutes of your day.
Oh, without a doubt. It completely flips the script.
Yeah. So if you are someone who is, constantly trying to level up, gain knowledge efficiently, and master complex systems without feeling just completely crushed by information overload, well, you are going to want to take notes.
Because today we are pulling insights from this wildly ambitious piece of source material. It's called C2 English Mastery, the Strategic Morning Immersion System.
And it's built on this really incredible dialogue between two linguistic experts, Emma and John, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we should probably clarify right away, their goal in this text isn't just, getting a little better at English.
Right. No, they are targeting C2 level mastery.
Which, in the linguistic world, C2 is the absolute highest echelon of language proficiency.
The peak.
Right. It's what they call formidable fluency. But the really fascinating part isn't even the destination itself. It's the vehicle they use to get there.
Because they argue you can achieve this by completely hacking the psychology of your morning routine.
Exactly. Just rewiring it from the moment you wake up.
Which is exactly why I loved this source material for you, our listener. Because, nobody has time to add 3 uninterrupted hours of textbook study to their day.
No, of course not. It's a total myth that we can just, invent extra time.
Right. But this system, it doesn't ask you to invent time. It just asks you to take the habits you are already executing between opening your eyes and starting work and surgically alter them.
Yeah, but to understand how this actually works, we really have to look at the exact moment consciousness returns.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source draws this incredibly sharp contrast between what our brains actually need in that moment and what we, actually do to them.
Right. So let's look at the baseline. John, one of the experts in the text, he describes the moment he wakes up, and his instinct is to just lie there for a second.
Right. Let the brain power up.
Exactly. Let the brain power up, mentally map out the priorities for his day. But Emma, his counterpart, she points out how statistically rare that behavior has actually become.
Oh, it's basically extinct. Because what does the average modern human do the split second their eyes open?
Yep, they blindly slap the nightstand.
Grab the phone and just stare into the bright light of 100 notifications.
Exactly. And the text points out that this immediate influx of digital stimulation, it does something very specific and very damaging.
It actively fragments your attention.
Right, before your brain is even finished, booting up its operating system.
Okay, wait, I want to push back on this a little bit. On behalf of everyone listening who is thinking, yeah, phones are bad in the morning, we get it.
Sure, it sounds like standard advice.
Right. Is checking my email or looking at a news headline for 30 seconds really that damaging to language learning? It feels like we're being, a bit dramatic.
It's actually not dramatic at all when you understand the mechanics of cognitive load.
Cognitive load. Okay, break that down for us.
So it's a foundational psychological concept that the source leans on really heavily. Imagine your working memory, the part of your brain that holds and processes new information in real time. Imagine it as a very small, very fragile table.
Okay, a small table.
Right, you only have so much surface area.
Yeah.
Cognitive load is essentially the total weight of the items you are stacking on that table.
Okay, so when I wake up and immediately see an urgent email from my boss, a text from my mom asking for a favor, and some chaotic headline about the economy.
You are dumping 3 massive, heavy boxes straight onto that fragile table.
Wow.
Yeah, your cognitive load spikes instantly. Your brain is suddenly diverting massive amounts of energy to process anxiety, formulate replies, categorize existential threats.
And my fragile table just collapses.
Basically, yeah. When your morning is reactive like that, your working memory is essentially redlining. There's literally 0 bandwidth left for high-level processing.
I was thinking about this when I read the source, and it feels like trying to run a marathon, but you decide to start the race by eating a giant box of donuts right at the starting line.
Oh, that is a fantastic analogy.
I mean, sure, you get a massive spike of dopamine and sugar for a brief second, but you completely obliterate your physical endurance before the actual work even begins.
Right, you're sick before mile 1.
Exactly. You spike your cognitive load, and your mental endurance is just shot for the rest of the day.
That analogy perfectly aligns with one of the most, I think, critical quotes from the source material, which is, attention is currency.
Attention is currency. I love that.
Yeah, they make it explicitly clear that in the realm of language acquisition, your attention is your only real purchasing power.
So if you spend your entire daily allowance of attention on social media algorithms and stressful emails in the first 3 minutes of waking up,
You are bankrupting your working memory.
yeah.
You literally cannot afford the neurological processing power required to internalize a secondary language at a C2 level.
Wow. Okay, attention is currency. So if we accept that, the immediate question is, how do we protect that currency?
Right.
How do we build a moat around that fragile working memory the second our eyes open? And the source material's answer to this is what completely blew my mind.
It really is wild.
Because it isn't just about ignoring the phone, it goes way deeper. It's about the actual literal voice inside your head.
Yes, the very first directive of this immersion system starts before you even move your body.
You're just lying there in bed.
Exactly. You wake up and immediately you must switch your internal dialogue to English.
Which sounds so hard.
It is. You have to actively suppress the urge to form your first conscious thought in your native language.
No, when I first read that, I thought, okay, well, that's a cute symbolic gesture, get in the English mindset, put on the English hat.
But the experts in the text are dead serious. It isn't symbolic at all.
Not at all.
No, what's fascinating here is the absolute neurological necessity of this step. The text diagnoses this massive roadblock for language learners called linguistic interference.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of linguistic interference, because I think everyone listening who has ever tried to learn a language knows this exact feeling, even if they didn't, have a formal name for it.
Oh, for sure. So linguistic interference happens when your brain defaults to its native language neural pathways to form a concept, right?
Okay.
And then it forces you to route that concept through a secondary translation center before you can actually produce the thought in English.
So you are adding a massive, unnecessary detour to your cognitive processing.
Exactly. Your native language is literally interfering with the speed and efficiency of your target language.
It's a translation tax. You are paying a tax in milliseconds and mental energy every single time you formulate a sentence.
That's a great way to put it. And the text draws a really hard line here about what C2 actually means.
Right, because C2 isn't just knowing a dictionary's worth of vocabulary.
No, it is defined by immediacy. Immediacy. That is the operative word here.
Meaning no lag.
Exactly. If you are translating, you are hesitating.
Huh.
If there is a delay between the conception of the thought and the articulation of the thought, you are simply not functioning at a C2 level.
True fluency means the native language center is bypassed completely.
Bypassed completely, yes.
But let's inject some reality into this, because as the person representing you, the listener, I have to admit something. It is incredibly hard to control your thoughts when you are groggy.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, the source gives this example of intercepting that classic grumpy morning thought, right? You wake up and think, I don't want to wake up.
We all have that thought.
And they say you should replace it with the English thought. Good morning. Today presents new challenges and opportunities.
Right.
But come on, my brain barely knows what day it is, let alone how to formulate high-level syntax before I've had coffee.
I know. But that friction you're feeling, that is exactly why it works. The source acknowledges that it requires intense, deliberate effort at first.
So the struggle is the point.
Exactly. Look closely at the structure of that replacement thought. Today presents new challenges. You aren't just thinking, me tired, coffee good.
Right.
You are demanding that your brain utilize elevated professional syntax from the absolute 0 point of your day.
Which means we aren't just practicing vocabulary here. We are actively doing neurosurgery on our own habits.
Precisely. You are forcing the brain to fire its neurons in a specific complex English pattern while it is still in that highly plastic, impressionable state of waking up.
Oh, because the brain is still booting up.
Right. If the very first neural pathway that fires in the morning is a sophisticated English sentence, you set a neurological precedent for the rest of the day.
You are telling your brain, hey, the translation mechanism is offline today. We are operating directly in English.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've conquered the internal monologue. You're lying there. You've successfully formulated a high-level English thought. You've guarded your attention currency, and you haven't touched your phone.
A very successful first 2 minutes.
A huge win. But eventually, you do have to throw off the covers and face the external world. So how do we protect this fragile, newly primed English mindset once the actual chaos of the morning begins?
This is where we transition from internal production to curated external input.
Okay.
The text calls for immediate passive immersion, but they're incredibly strict about what this actually means. You cannot just turn on a pop music station or, a casual morning zoo radio show.
Right. No background noise. The source is demanding intellectually stimulating exposure. They specifically list things like dense policy debates, deep dive financial analysis, philosophical discussions, or high-level scientific commentary.
Yes, and just a quick sidebar here, which is vital for us to state clearly as we analyze these sources.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
When the text recommends using policy debates or discussions on, say, climate policy or global economics, the goal is purely mechanical.
Purely mechanical.
Right. We, as hosts, and the system itself, are not telling you to endorse, adopt, or align with any specific political viewpoints.
Left, right, or center.
Exactly. Whatever you might hear in those broadcasts. The content is merely a linguistic vehicle. You are listening impartially to mine the language, to absorb the vocabulary and the structural sophistication, entirely separate from whatever ideological stance the speaker happens to be taking.
Exactly. We are essentially acting as linguistic scientists analyzing a specimen. We don't care about the politics, we care about the syntax.
Well said.
But this brings me to a massive point of friction, and I really want to challenge this concept.
All right, hit me.
If I put on a dense, high-level scientific commentary or some complex financial breakdown about derivative markets while I am, brushing my teeth, I'm not going to understand half of it. The nuances are going to go right over my head. So doesn't listening to incomprehensible jargon spike my cognitive load? Mm-hmm. Isn't that exactly what we just spent the first 10 minutes trying to avoid? It just feels like it would be frustrating noise.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because it does seem like a contradiction until you understand the neurology of what the text calls auditory conditioning.
Auditory conditioning.
There is a massive difference between active decoding and passive rhythmic absorption.
Okay, unpack that difference for me, because right now I'm just picturing myself getting a headache while looking for my socks.
Fair enough. When you are actively decoding, meaning you're straining to understand the semantic meaning of every single word about derivative markets, yes, your cognitive load spikes. But auditory conditioning doesn't ask you to decode the meaning. It asks your brain's pattern recognition engines, specifically areas like Wernicke's area, to just absorb the phones, the cadence, and the structural rhythm of the language.
So I don't even need to know what the words mean?
Not initially, no. Even if the semantic meaning is completely lost on you, your brain is subconsciously mapping how advanced sentences are constructed, where the pauses naturally fall, and how transitions are deployed.
Okay, so my conscious brain might be saying, I have no idea what a credit default swap is, but my subconscious brain is saying, notice how the speaker used an introductory participial phrase followed by a dependent clause to emphasize causality.
Exactly. That is exactly what's happening. And the source justifies this by pointing to the most ruthless, successful language learners in human history.
Which are?
Toddlers.
Right.
Children do not wait until they fully comprehend the subjunctive mood before they start listening to their parents. They don't study grammar textbooks.
No, they just exist in it.
Exactly. They are just bathed in the sounds, the rhythms, and the structures of their native tongue for years.
They absorb the patterns first, and the meaning snaps into place later.
Precisely. The text argues that at the C2 level, this kind of relentless auditory conditioning builds your intuition.
Intuition?
Yes. When you hear complex structures repeatedly, your brain begins to internalize them as correct simply because they sound familiar. And this is a profound insight from the source. The difference between an advanced learner and a near-native speaker is intuition.
Wow.
A near-native speaker doesn't calculate grammar rules before they speak. They just feel what is correct based on thousands of hours of passive conditioning.
That completely reframes how I think about listening to podcasts or the news. I don't need to pass a quiz on the content. I'm just letting my brain marinate in the structural brilliance of the language.
Exactly. Let the brain marinate.
So we've got the internal thought locked in, we've got the passive audio washing over us, but eventually we have to start moving and actually doing things in the morning.
Right, real life begins.
And this is where the source demands that we activate the physical mechanics of the language.
Yes, we move from passive absorption into active physical production. And the rule here is non-negotiable. You must speak out loud.
Out loud.
Out loud. Even if you live alone, even if you are just talking to your coffee maker, you have to articulate your actions.
But it's not just narrating what you're doing like a child, right? You don't just say, I am walking to the kitchen, I am making coffee.
No, the source requires a massive upgrade in how you describe your mundane reality.
Right. So instead of saying, I'm making coffee, the text suggests you articulate out loud. I'm preparing coffee while organizing my thoughts for the day.
It is such a fascinating psychological shift.
Yeah.
You are taking a baseline functional action and describing it with the precision and gravity of a diplomat.
And the source provides this incredible list of verbs. They want you to audit your vocabulary and completely eradicate basic verbs from your morning routine.
Yes, the basic verbs have to go.
So the word do is out. You replace it with execute.
Because you don't just do a task, you execute it. Execute implies planning, precision, and a definitive conclusion.
And think about is gone. It becomes contemplate.
Contemplating requires cognitive depth. You aren't just having a passing thought, you are dedicating focus and resources to an idea.
I love that. And deal with is banished. It becomes address.
Because dealing with an issue sounds passive, almost like you are a victim of circumstance. Addressing an issue is authoritative, proactive, and professional.
And my absolute favorite, fix, becomes resolve.
Right, because a fix can be a temporary Band-Aid. A resolution implies a permanent, structural, well-thought-out solution. The text explains that this practice is all about lexical precision.
Lexical precision.
At the C2 level, choosing the exact perfect word for a specific context is what signals intellectual maturity and enhances your credibility.
You know, I was trying to visualize this, and I came up with this analogy. Upgrading your lexical precision is almost exactly like upgrading your wardrobe.
Okay, tell me more.
Using verbs like do, fix, and make is perfectly fine. They communicate the point. But they are essentially the sweatpants of language.
The sweatpants of language.
They are comfortable, they get the job done, they are super casual. But words like contemplate, execute, and resolve, that is a tailored suit for your thoughts.
Oh, I love that analogy. That's perfect.
But let me take it a step further, because anyone who has ever put on a perfectly tailored suit or a really sharp outfit knows that it doesn't just change how you look, it actually changes your physical posture.
Oh, absolutely.
You stand taller, you walk differently, and I think that's what the source is getting at here. When you use C2 vocabulary to speak to yourself in your kitchen, you stand a little taller mentally. You adopt a completely different cognitive posture for the day.
That is spot on. But we do have to be careful here, and I want to test you on this.
Uh-oh.
Because the text warns against forced complexity. So imagine you are feeding your dog in the morning. If you are trying to use C2 vocabulary, would you say, I am currently delivering nutritional sustenance to the canine?
Well, he uses big words, so yes. I mean, I am delivering the sustenance.
And that is exactly the trap. That sounds like a robot reading a thesaurus.
Fair point.
The source explicitly warns against that. C2 isn't about using the longest, most obscure words possible just to sound smart. It's about natural lexical precision.
So what would a native say?
A true C2 native speaker wouldn't say delivering nutritional sustenance. They would use an advanced phrasal verb and say, I'm sorting out the dog's breakfast.
Oh.
It is effortless, it is precise, and it sounds entirely natural.
Ah, I see. It's the difference between sounding like you swallowed a dictionary versus sounding like you actually own the language.
Exactly.
Sorting out the dog's breakfast is the tailored suit that actually fits, rather than one that's 3 sizes too big.
Perfect way to put it.
And there is a physical component to this out loud practice, right? It's not just mental.
Exactly. The text emphasizes muscle memory.
Muscle memory for speech.
Yes. Articulation is a highly complex physical choreography. Your tongue, your lips, your soft palate, and your vocal cords all have to learn the precise micro movements required to produce complex English sounds fluidly.
Wow.
By speaking these advanced sentences out loud every morning, you are literally training the physical apparatus of your speech. You are building muscle memory so that when you need to use these words in a high-stakes meeting later, your mouth already knows the exact choreography.
Okay, so I'm standing in my kitchen, my auditory conditioning podcast is playing, I'm executing my morning coffee preparation, and my articulation muscle memory is firing.
You're doing great.
But I know myself. The second I sit down with that coffee, the friction hits again. My brain says, okay, we did the work, reward me, let me scroll social media, let me read a trashy celebrity headline.
The temptation is real.
But if my brain is freshly primed for C2 syntax, feeding it a basic, grammatically chaotic social media feed feels like it would instantly undo all that morning magic.
It absolutely would. Which is why the system anticipates that exact moment of weakness and asserts the next step.
Which is?
5 minutes of analytical reading.
Yeah.
You have to feed the primed brain with high-density architectural material.
And the source is very specific about the menu here. They suggest an editorial analyzing global affairs, an academic abstract, a reflective essay, or a dense literary excerpt.
Right.
But the absolute golden, unbreakable rule of this step is do not skim.
Skimming is the enemy of this system. When we skim, we are just hunting for the dopamine hit of the conclusion or the core data point.
Just trying to get the gist.
Exactly. But analytical reading is not about extracting information. It is about deconstructing mechanics.
Yeah.
You are looking at the blueprint of how the author built their thoughts.
The text gives brilliant examples of how to interrogate the text. You don't just read a sentence and move on. You stop and you ask yourself, like, wait, why did the writer use the word nevertheless here instead of however? Or why did they write to a considerable extent instead of just saying a lot?
Let's actually look at that difference because it perfectly illustrates the C2 mindset.
Let's do it.
If an author uses however, they're just signaling a basic contrast. But if they use nevertheless, they're signaling a contrast that exists in spite of the overwhelming evidence they just presented in the previous clause.
Oh, wow.
It carries a totally different weight and formality. When you force yourself to stop and notice that choice, you are internalizing the subtle shading of transition words.
And while you are interrogating the text, the source tells you to hunt for something very specific. They call it the fingerprint of advanced fluency, which is such a great phrase.
It really is. They are talking about collocation.
Collocations, okay.
Collocations are the secret engine of natural-sounding English. If we connect this to the bigger picture of language learning, a collocation is just a specific combination of words that natively appear together.
So they aren't governed by strict logical, grammatical rules?
No, not really. They are just bound together by decades of custom and usage.
The text gives 3 specific high-level examples to show what they mean. The first one is the phrase, deeply rooted assumption.
Think about that. You wouldn't say a strongly planted assumption or a heavily buried assumption.
Even though logically, semantically, those mean the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But deeply rooted is the native collocation.
The second example is far-reaching consequences.
Again, you would never say wide-traveling consequences or long-distance consequences. It has to be far-reaching.
And the third is mutually beneficial agreement.
Not a two-way good agreement. It's mutually beneficial. Mastering these specific customary pairings is the ultimate defense against sounding translated.
Because if you don't know the collocations, you end up constructing sentences word by word from a mental dictionary, and it just sounds clunky.
Yes. When you read analytically for 5 minutes, your entire goal is to hunt down these native collocations and steal them for your own arsenal.
Which brings us perfectly to the climax of the morning routine. You've deconstructed how experts build complex thoughts. Now you have to prove you can construct one yourself. You move from consuming to creating.
This is the reflective composition phase, and the text outlines a very specific quantitative requirement. You must write exactly 3 complex sentences every single morning.
Just 3.
Just 3. But they are ruthless about what counts as a sentence here. You cannot sit down and write, the sky is blue today, I have a meeting at 10, my dog is hungry.
Those are simple statements. The system demands sophisticated reflections.
Right. The source provides a model sentence to demonstrate exactly what a C2 level reflection looks like. The example they give is, although I anticipate a demanding schedule, I remain committed to maintaining intellectual discipline throughout the day.
I mean, that is a heavyweight sentence. If I wrote that before 8 a.m., I'd feel like a philosopher king.
Oh, right.
But let's put that sentence under the microscope. Why, structurally, does the source hold this up as the gold standard?
It is a masterclass in C2 construction. First, look at the syntax. It uses subordination. It starts with although, which immediately creates a dependent clause that sets up tension and contrast with the main clause.
So it proves you can hold two competing ideas in a single grammatical structure.
Exactly. Then there is the vocabulary. They don't say, I expect a hard day. They say, I anticipate a demanding schedule. They don't say, I will try to stay focused. They say, I remain committed to maintaining intellectual discipline.
It is incredibly elevated, precise language.
And finally, it contains emotional nuance. It acknowledges reality and difficulty, the demanding schedule, while firmly asserting a positive, disciplined intent. It expresses a highly complex psychological state through flawless grammar.
And here's where the math of this system absolutely staggered me. The source points out that writing 3 of these sentences takes maybe 3 minutes, but 3 sentences a day yields over 1,000 complex sentences a year.
1,000.
1,000 flawless C2 level structures generated natively from your own brain.
Which perfectly illustrates the core philosophical engine of this entire system, the principle of incremental mastery.
Incremental mastery.
The text argues forcefully that neurological mastery does not occur in massive, exhausting bursts. It occurs in tiny daily increments. But those increments compound.
A 1% improvement every day doesn't just add up, it multiplies.
Exactly. The source drops a really hard truth here for anyone who has ever tried to cram for a test or learn a language on the weekends. They state unequivocally, consistency outperforms intensity.
Consistency outperforms intensity.
Practicing this hyperstructured system for 20 minutes daily is vastly superior to studying for 3 hours straight on a Sunday.
And that isn't just an opinion, it is a neurological fact.
Yep. If you study intensely for 3 hours on Sunday, but then you don't engage your target language Monday through Saturday, the synaptic connections you built start to wither.
The brain prunes what it doesn't actively use.
But if you activate those exact same neural pathways every single morning, even just for 20 minutes, you're essentially pouring concrete over those connections.
You are signaling to your brain every day, this network is essential for my daily survival. Do not prune this, reinforce it.
Beautifully said.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of psychological and linguistic ground here. To prove that this isn't just ivory tower theory, the source material actually provides a realistic scenario.
Well, this is the best part.
It paints a minute-by-minute picture of what your morning could actually look like tomorrow, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. if you deploy this entire system.
Let's walk through that timeline. It grounds all this high-level neurology into actionable reality.
All right, picture this. Tomorrow morning, your alarm rings at 7 a.m. The very first second you're conscious, before your hand even twitches toward your phone, you sit up.
You feel that groggy native language thought trying to form, and you forcefully intercept it.
You think to yourself, clearly, in English, today is an opportunity to refine my skills.
Boom. You have instantly bypassed linguistic interference and protected your cognitive load from the digital chaos.
Next, as you walk to the bathroom, you turn on a high-level podcast discussing global economic trends or urban policy.
You aren't trying to memorize facts about inflation. You are letting the auditory conditioning wash over you, allowing your subconscious to absorb the cadence and rhythm of advanced discourse.
Then you head to the kitchen. While you are physically making your breakfast, you activate your muscle memory. You speak out loud, replacing basic verbs with lexical precision. I need to prioritize strategic tasks to maximize productivity today.
You are wearing the tailored suit of language. Your articulation choreography is firing.
You sit down with your food. You ignore social media. For exactly 5 minutes, you read a brief analytical article.
You refuse to skim. You interrogate the text. You hunt for collocations, noting phrases like long-term sustainability or systemic reform.
And finally, before you open your laptop for work, you pull out a notebook. You write your 3 sophisticated reflections. The text provides this example for the timeline. Despite certain uncertainties, I remain optimistic about my capacity to adapt and grow.
All of that is completed, and it is barely 8 a.m.
That is the magic of it. You haven't had to wake up 2 hours earlier. You haven't added massive friction to your life. You have just taken the mundane actions you were already doing, waking up, making coffee, reading, and completely re-engineered them into a C2 immersion environment.
To really solidify this framework, the source provides a vocabulary consolidation list. It's a collection of the key terms used throughout their methodology. But they offer a vital warning. These are not just words, they are tools.
Let's run a quick audit of those tools because they perfectly summarize the entire psychology of this deep dive. First, we have cognitive load and linguistic interference.
Those are the twin enemies, the obstacles you must actively manage and bypass the very split second you wake up to protect your mental bandwidth.
Next are incremental mastery and lexical precision.
That is your philosophy and your weapon, the belief in daily compounding growth combined with the exact calculated choice of every single verb you use.
We have auditory conditioning and subconscious assimilation.
The recognition that your brain is a pattern-matching machine, capable of absorbing complex structural syntax through passive, curated listening, even when you aren't actively studying.
Intellectual resilience and structural sophistication.
The mental stamina required to push through the friction of reading challenging material and the advanced grammatical architecture you extract from that reading.
And finally, articulation clarity and sustainable consistency.
The physical act of training the muscles of speech and the unwavering commitment to doing it every single day without fail.
The source material ends the practical instruction of the system by challenging the learner with 4 advanced reflection questions. And I think it is absolutely critical that we pause and pose these directly to you listening right now.
The text insists that advanced fluency requires a brutal level of self-awareness. You have to be deeply honest with yourself about your current default habits.
Question 1. Do you rely on translation when speaking English?
If the answer is yes, you are still paying the translation tax. You are battling linguistic interference, and you need to focus intensely on step 1, hijacking that internal dialogue the moment you wake up.
Question 2. Are your vocabulary choices precise or repetitive?
If you monitor your speech and realize you are constantly relying on do, make, fix, and think, your lexical precision is weak. You're wearing the sweatpants. You need to upgrade your verbs.
Question 3. Do you expose yourself to complex sentence structures daily?
If your daily reading diet consists exclusively of Slack messages, quick emails, and social media captions, you are actively degrading your syntactic awareness. You need those 5 minutes of dense, analytical reading to maintain the architecture.
And question 4, which I think cuts the deepest. Are you cultivating intellectual confidence in English?
This is perhaps the single most important point in the entire source text. As they explicitly state, C2 English isn't about sounding impressive. It isn't a parlor trick to show off to your colleagues. It is about expressing highly complex ideas with absolute clarity, unshakable confidence, and pinpoint precision. If you lack the internal confidence, you will hesitate and stumble, even if your brain possesses the vocabulary.
So what does this all mean for us? If we pull all these disparate threads together, the neurology, the collocations, the muscle memory, the overarching theme of this source material is a massive paradigm shift. Your morning is not just a routine sequence of tasks to get you out the door. The experts in the text define it as a cognitive gateway.
I love that terminology, a cognitive gateway. It perfectly captures the stakes. It implies that the morning is the singular access point that determines the operational capacity of your brain for the rest of the day. If you control the gateway, you control your mental environment. And if you rigorously control your mental environment, you dramatically accelerate your linguistic mastery.
The text leaves the reader with a very direct call to action. They ask, what advanced expression will you start using tomorrow morning? They don't want you to just think this was an interesting deep dive and move on. They want a tangible commitment. Don't just wake up tomorrow. Wake up in English.
Refine one single sentence tomorrow. Strengthen one single thought, elevate one single verb, because as the source beautifully concludes, it is through those tiny, invisible daily victories that your fluency evolves from merely functional to absolutely formidable.
Formidable fluency. That is the ultimate goal. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over, building on everything we've just unpacked from this incredible source material. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how a 20-minute, hyper-intentional, ruthlessly protected morning structure can literally rewire your neural pathways to master a completely different language. It is an awe-inspiring demonstration of cognitive control.
It really is.
But I want you to think about the broader implications of that mechanism. If controlling the cognitive gateway of your first waking hour is powerful enough to bypass deeply entrenched linguistic interference, trigger subconscious pattern assimilation, and compound day by day into C2 level mastery, what other deeply ingrained habits, dormant skills, or even fundamental personality traits could you radically transform? If you have the power to hack your own working memory and install a completely new language before you've even had breakfast, What else could you deliberately install on that blank canvas before the chaotic reality of the day begins? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep thinking, keep refining, and keep evolving.